I'm Ron, and this is my damn show. Let's get into it.
Joyce, let me read the post from Attorney General Pam Bondi this morning. She writes, at my direction, early this morning, federal agents arrested Don Lemon, Traherne Jean Cruz, Georgia Fort, and Jamil Liddell Lundy in connection with the coordinated attack on City's Church in St. Paul, Minnesota. More details soon. So she says it was at her direction. We've now learned that Lemon will be charged with conspiracy to deprive rights, interfering by force of someone's First Amendment, and those First Amendment rights. What do these charges suggest to you?
So these are charges that I have indicted, but not frequently. No federal prosecutor uses these with frequency because they require, in the case of the civil rights charge, a level of intent. In the case of the FACE Act violation, which applies to reproductive health care clinics as well as to religious spaces, it requires the use of force or intimidation. And let's just be clear about something. No jury will convict on these charges unless there are unknown facts about the use of force in this setting. So what this really is about is it's about intimidating the free press. It's about intimidating First Amendment. We've seen this Justice Department. It really seems to have a penchant for indicting cases that it cannot convict in, from the sandwich thrower to the Jim Comey failed prosecution in the Eastern District of Virginia. This feels like more of the president's revenge agenda, even though the Attorney General says that the case was indicted on her orders. And something we're seeing increasingly from this Justice Department is that they're willing to inflict pain through the process of criminal investigation and criminal indictment upon people that they perceive as enemies, even in cases where a conviction is very unlikely.
I want to bring in MS Now senior investigative reporter Carol Lennick. And Carol, you have some new reporting about the prosecutors in this case. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Anna, what we've been hearing for really a week and a half has been concern among prosecutors in Minnesota about the way this office has basically been hijacked by the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General's office. There is an acting U.S. attorney there named Dan Rosen, and he has no experience as a prosecutor, which will sound familiar to a lot of you on the panel because that was one of the major problems in the Eastern District of Virginia. But the new news here is that those prosecutors with concerns about the immigration arrests and whether or not those were legal, they are also very concerned and declined to participate in this because they don't believe the Don Lemon charges will actually stand up, just as Joyce just referred to. This use of force or the threat of force is not evident in any of the evidence, according to our sources. LA prosecutors, federal prosecutors in Los Angeles, also registered concern, and some of them declined to participate in this because, again, they have a duty of candor to the court. They don't feel comfortable bringing cases and pursuing cases where they do not think the facts line up with the charges.
And as you touched on, this isn't the first time we've seen career prosecutors buck orders from Maine Justice. How would you say, Carol, this compares?
Well, I think it's very worrisome because it shows, one, that the Department of Justice, via the president, is going to continue directing who is targeted and use whatever means that are at their disposal. Whether or not convictions are ever achieved, to echo Joyce, seems almost irrelevant and unlikely, to be fair. The career prosecutors that I've spoken to, the sources I've spoken to across this huge Department of Justice are kind of beside themselves. Like, when is it going to end? When is this idea of using our Justice Department, which is supposed to be based on facts and law, when is it going to stick to that norm and that expectation that the U.S. public has?
Do we know which U.S. Attorney's Office brought this arrest warrant?
So I would rather not delve into what we don't have absolutely firm, but I can say that my understanding is there are some cases in Minnesota that we're looking at that appear to be this one, but I would rather not speak about something we don't have absolutely certain.
Carol, thank you so much. We'll let you continue to do the reporting and be in contact with your sources. Come back to us as you confirm more information, please. Joyce, still so much we don't know. However, we have seen this Justice Department go after perceived political foes. This does feel like an escalation, doesn't it, when it comes down to going after a journalist?
Absolutely, and that's the entire point here. You know, this administration has a knack for trying to isolate people it believes won't be sympathetic to the public. So, for instance, going after people who don't have citizenship in this country and trying to single them out for due process violations was an early example of that. Now they're going for journalists who are independent journalists, hoping that perhaps people won't be sympathetic either for that reason or because they were involved in something that took place in a church. That's a great first place, I suspect, in this administration's point of view to start with eroding the free press. So that's very much what we're seeing here.
I just want to read one chunk and reiterate what Abby Lowell, Don Lemon's attorney, said in his statement. He says the First Amendment exists to protect journalists whose role it is to shine light on the truth and hold those in power accountable. There's no more important time for people like Don to be doing his work. Joyce, do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. The First Amendment is one of the most important constitutional guarantees that upholds our democracy. And Thomas Jefferson sort of famously said that if he had a choice between the three primary democratic institutions, Congress, the courts, and the president, and if he had to let one of them go in order to have a free press, he would choose the free press. It's so important to have sunlight. It's often been said it's the best disinfectant. It prevents corruption, it prevents incompetence, it prevents abuse. And we understand in this moment how critically important journalism and a free press is for Americans to understand what's going on. Of course, this is an administration that does not like the free press. I don't think any administration loves being criticized, but this one is determined to tamp down on it in ways that directly conflict with First Amendment guarantees. And these cases will not do well in the courts for that reason precisely.
I mean, Joyce, we already saw a magistrate judge reject arrest warrants for Don Lemon and others because of that First Amendment right and said there wasn't evidence to bring these types of charges. So what changed?
Well, what changed is that prosecutors went in front of a grand jury, and Carol made a really important point here, that the acting U.S. attorney in Minneapolis, not yet Senate confirmed, is someone who has experience as a lawyer but doesn't have experience as a criminal prosecutor. And having made the shift early in my career from a civil lawyer to a criminal lawyer, that's a pretty steep learning curve. The most important part of it is that burden of proof beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a very high standard prosecutors have to meet to get convictions in courts. But it's easy to go in front of a grand jury and get an indictment, and that appears to be exactly what happened here. The traditional standard at DOJ is that you shouldn't indict a case unless you believe you have sufficient evidence to both obtain a conviction and to sustain it on appeal. But that long-standing rule seems to be out the window under this administration.
I'll be short here. Every day, every morning you wake up, it's something new. We fall further and further into a dictatorship every freaking day. Don Lemon and those other 3 people arrested, 3 or 4 or 5, I know at least 4 of them are black, including Lemon. They did nothing wrong. Especially Lemon and Georgia Ford. They were doing what journalists do. They were reporting. Nothing wrong. The fact that he's been speaking out against this horrible administration and the first Trump administration is the fact why he was arrested. Let's be honest. Weaponization of the Justice Department has never been more blatant than what it is now. And right-wingers, you know that. So pull your heads out your asses. Stop giving false narratives, false equivocations, as if it was the same on Joe Biden. You never seen Joe Biden post or tweet, these people are bad, go arrest them. And the next day it happens. Or the next 2 or 3 days it happens. It's happened several times under this administration. I could go on and on, but let me know what you guys think in the comments. Thanks for watching.